Ensign Daniel Carter sat at his console aboard the exploration vessel Aurora's Hope. His hands moved quickly over the controls, but his mind was elsewhere. The ship was on a long journey between systems, and most of the crew were restless. The only excitement was the new experiment the science team had decided to test, an advanced neural link system that allowed the bridge officers to share thoughts directly. The idea was simple. If the crew could think together during dangerous missions, they would respond faster than any enemy. Daniel had never used such technology before. He had read the manuals, listened to the instructions, and nodded like he understood. But when the helmet was lowered over his head and the lights flickered, he felt nervous. It was not just the thought of connecting his mind with others. It was the fear of what might slip through. The human brain was full of random thoughts, silly distractions, and half-formed feelings. What if someone heard something he did not mean to share? Beside him sat Lieutenant Kayla. She was not human, though her figure and face were close enough to make Daniel forget that sometimes. Her skin had a soft silver tone and her eyes glowed faintly in dim light. She was from a species known as the Veari, experts in diplomacy and cultural studies. Kayla had been assigned to the Aurora's Hope to help with first contact missions. She was calm, disciplined, and always spoke with measured words. Daniel admired her skill and her presence, but he kept his admiration carefully hidden. Or at least he thought he did. The neural link activated with a low hum. Daniel felt a sudden pressure behind his eyes, like his thoughts were being stretched open. A rush of impressions filled his head, tiny sparks of awareness that belonged to others. He sensed Commander Harker's steady focus, the captain's calm authority, and Kayla's sharp curiosity. It was strange but not painful. He tried to control his breathing, to think only about his duties. Focus on the ship's data. Focus on the signals from the nearby star system. Focus on anything safe, but then it happened. A stray thought, quick and unguarded, slipped out before he could stop it. He had been aware of Kayla sitting close, her movements graceful even in the rigid seat. His tired brain, distracted by the glow of her silver armor plates that curved naturally along her body, formed a simple, foolish line of thought. Her form is kind of perfect. The words did not stay inside. The neural link carried them like a signal broadcast. The entire bridge heard them, not with ears, but directly in their minds. Daniel froze, eyes wide. His face burned. He wanted to rip the helmet off, to disappear into the floor. This was worse than anything he had imagined. Of all the possible mistakes, he had let slip a personal thought about a superior officer. And not just any officer, an alien diplomat whose respect he had worked so hard to earn. For a long second, silence held the bridge. No one moved. Even the hum of the ship seemed quieter. Then Kayla turned her head slowly toward him, her glowing eyes fixed on his face. Daniel braced himself for anger, for cold words, for a sharp demand that he be removed from the link. He expected laughter from the crew, maybe even punishment from the captain. His career might be over before it truly began, but none of that happened. Kayla's expression did not show offense or mockery. Instead, her brows lifted slightly and her voice, calm and even, filled the air. "Ensign Carter," she said, "explain something. Why would a human give attention to shape, to curves, to what you call form? What value does it carry?" Daniel blinked. Of all the responses he had imagined, this was not one of them. She was not angry. She was curious. Her tone carried no judgment, only genuine interest. The captain cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to interrupt. Commander Harker smothered a cough that might have been a laugh. The rest of the crew remained silent, waiting for Daniel's answer. His mouth felt dry. He struggled to form words. It's a human thing," he stammered. "We notice appearance. Not just for function, but we see beauty in it. Sometimes it's simple. Sometimes it means more. It's not disrespect. It's just appreciation." Kayla tilted her head, considering this. "Interesting," she murmured. "Among my people, physical form has no special meaning. A body is a vessel, a tool. We do not admire shapes. Yet humans connect emotion to what they see." Why? Daniel hesitated. He could feel the weight of the entire bridge watching him. He wanted to crawl away, but Kayla's calm eyes held him in place. He thought carefully, trying to explain. "Maybe because it reminds us we're alive. We find joy in little things. Even in something as simple as how someone moves or how they look. It tells us something about them. Or maybe it tells us something about ourselves." For a moment, Kayla did not reply. Then slowly a small smile touched her lips. "A curious habit," she said. "Perhaps not as foolish as I first thought." The captain gave a quick nod and ordered the test to continue, but Daniel felt the tension in the room had shifted. His slip had not destroyed him. Instead, it had opened a door he never expected. Kayla's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer, thoughtful and sharp, before she turned back to her console. Daniel sat stiffly in his chair, heart racing. He did not know what the next hour would bring, but one thing was certain. His mistake had not ended the experiment. It had only just begun. The next day aboard Aurora's Hope, Daniel walked into the mess hall with his head lowered. He could still feel the weight of his mistake from the neural link session. Every time he passed another crew member, he wondered if they were remembering his careless thought. Some gave him polite nods, others gave quick smiles, and a few avoided eye contact altogether. He did not know if they were being kind or hiding their laughter. He sat down with a tray of food and tried to disappear into the background. But it did not last. Kyla entered the mess hall with her usual calm steps, carrying a small container of the strange green fluid her people drank for nourishment. Her glowing eyes searched the room, and then, to his surprise, she walked straight toward his table. Daniel nearly choked on his drink. He had hoped to avoid her for at least a few days, maybe forever. But Kayla sat across from him without hesitation. "Ensign Carter," she said in her steady voice. "We must speak." Daniel straightened, his heart pounding. "Yes, Lieutenant, I apologize again for yesterday." It was, Kayla raised a hand, stopping him. "Do not apologize. I am not offended. I'm curious. What happened during the neural link revealed something about your people. I wish to understand it." Daniel blinked. "You want to understand it?" "Yes." She leaned forward slightly. "Why do humans connect emotion to appearance? Why does a line of form or a movement bring joy or admiration? It is not logical. My people do not think this way." "Yet you do. Explain." Daniel hesitated. He had never thought about it so deeply. To him, it was just natural. But Kayla's intense gaze forced him to search for words. "Maybe because we see meaning where others see nothing. We find stories in faces, beauty in colors, strength in shapes. It's not always practical, but it makes life richer." Kayla studied him. "So you assign value to things that are not functional?" "Yes," Daniel admitted. "It might sound silly, but that's how humans are. We laugh at things that make no sense. We cry at songs even though the words are only sounds. We admire how someone looks, not because it changes the mission, but because it makes us feel something." Her silver eyes glowed a little brighter, as if a new idea was forming in her mind. "Perhaps that is why your people are different. Many species value only survival or strength, but humans find strength in emotion itself." Daniel relaxed a little, surprised by how seriously she was taking him. "I guess we do. Sometimes it's embarrassing, like what happened yesterday, but sometimes it helps. It brings us closer." Kayla sat back, thoughtful. "I will study this further. I believe it could be important." Before Daniel could ask what she meant, the mess hall doors slid open again. Commander Harker walked in, his tall frame stiff and formal as always. He spotted Daniel and Kayla sitting together, raised an eyebrow but said nothing as he took his meal. Still, Daniel could not shake the feeling that others were beginning to notice. Later that day, the crew returned to the bridge for another round of neural link training. Daniel felt nervous as the helmet lowered over his head, but he tried to calm himself. He repeated in his mind, "Focus on the mission. Focus on the systems. Focus on the data. No personal thoughts. No slips." The link activated, and once again the flood of shared awareness filled his mind. He sensed Kayla's curiosity burning like a bright light, the captain's steady control and the commander's sharp discipline. This time Daniel kept his thoughts guarded. But Kayla did something unexpected. Through the link, her voice entered his mind, not aloud but clear and direct. "Tell me another human thought." "Not about me. About anything you value." Daniel almost panicked. But the request was calm, not demanding. He thought carefully, then formed a simple thought. "I like the stars. Not just because they guide us, but because they are beautiful." Kayla absorbed this. Beautiful. Again, a word of emotion. "Explain." "When I see the stars," Daniel answered slowly, "I feel small but also inspired. They remind me how big the universe is and how much we still have to discover." There was a pause. Then Kayla replied, her tone thoughtful. "Among my people, the stars are only coordinates, a map to follow. But to you, they are symbols. That is powerful." The conversation ended as the captain gave commands to test the link during a simulated emergency, but Daniel could feel something had changed. Kyla was beginning to see humans differently, not as careless beings full of random thoughts, but as a species with a strange strength hidden in those very thoughts. When the session ended, Kayla removed her helmet and looked directly at Daniel. "Ensign Carter," she said quietly so only he could hear, "I begin to think your slip yesterday was not a mistake. It was a key." Daniel did not know how to respond, but deep down he felt something he had not expected, a spark of pride. What he thought was the worst error of his career might be turning into something far greater. The following morning, Daniel thought he would have a quiet shift in the engine room, far away from any more questions. But Kayla had other plans. She appeared at the entrance with her usual calm stride, her silver-toned skin catching the lights of the corridor. "Ensign Carter," she said firmly, "walk with me. I require more understanding." Daniel almost groaned. He had barely finished his breakfast, and already she was pulling him into another conversation. But he followed, because refusing a senior officer was not an option. They moved through the wide halls of Aurora's Hope, past crew members who pretended not to stare. The incident from 2 days ago had clearly spread, but no one dared say it aloud. Kayla led him into one of the observation decks, where stars spilled across the wide glass windows like a sea of fire. She stood with her hands behind her back, gazing out. "You said yesterday that beauty makes life richer," she began. "But what is the value of such richness when survival is the true goal? My people see emotion as distraction." Daniel leaned against the railing, trying to find words. "Because survival isn't enough," he said. "If all you do is live from one day to the next without feeling joy or love or hope, then what's the point? Beauty reminds us why we want to survive in the first place." Kyla turned her glowing eyes toward him. "Strange. To us, survival itself is meaning. Yet humans create extra meaning where none exists. You make art, you sing, you admire forms. Is this not a waste of energy?" Daniel smiled a little, even though his nerves made him sweat. "Maybe, but it's what makes us strong too. We fight harder for things we care about, not just survival. That's why history is full of humans doing impossible things. Not just to live, but to live with meaning." Kyla tilted her head, considering this. Her people were known for logic, and she was struggling to balance that with his words. "Then I will test this," she said at last. "I will question you and you will answer. If I can understand, then perhaps your people's way has value." Before Daniel could protest, she began. "First question. Why do humans laugh? What use is this sound?" Daniel blinked. He had not expected such a direct challenge. "Laughter. It helps us release tension. Sometimes things are funny because they surprise us, or because they don't make sense. It brings people together. When we laugh, we feel closer." Kayla studied him carefully. "So you create noise, waste energy, and yet you claim it has social power?" "Yes," Daniel said firmly. "Laughter makes us trust each other. It reminds us we're not alone." Kayla's eyes narrowed slightly, as if filing the answer into a private record. "Second question. Why do humans admire physical form? Not only of others, but even of themselves?" Daniel swallowed, knowing exactly what memory she was pointing to. "Because it's a way of showing care," he explained slowly. "We notice each other. We celebrate differences. Sometimes it's simple attraction. Sometimes it's respect. Either way, it connects us." Kayla was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Among my people, such admiration would be meaningless. But perhaps connection itself is the point." Daniel nodded quickly. "Exactly. Connection is what keeps us alive in the hardest times." Kayla moved to the window again, her reflection shining faintly against the stars. "Third question. Why do humans value imperfection? You speak of flaws as if they are strengths. How can brokenness be worthy?" Daniel's voice grew steadier as he answered. "Because flaws make us real. If someone is perfect, they're impossible to reach. But if someone has scars, mistakes, weaknesses, we can understand them. We can stand beside them. Imperfection gives us hope that we too have worth even if we're not perfect." Kayla turned sharply to him. Her eyes glowed brighter than before. "Hope," she repeated. "That is the core. Your kind survives not only on skill but on hope." Daniel exhaled. He had not realized until that moment how much he had revealed. He expected her to dismiss it, to call it foolish again. Instead, Kayla's tone softened. "Your words challenge what I was taught. Perhaps this is why the command assigns humans to first contact missions more often than my own kind. You connect with others in ways that cannot be measured. Before Daniel could respond, the intercom crackled to life. Bridge to all senior staff. Report immediately. Unknown signal detected on long-range scans. Kayla straightened, her calm demeanor returning. We will continue this later, she said. They hurried through the corridors, joining the rest of the crew on the bridge. The captain stood over the central display, where a glowing shape appeared on the screen. It was not a star, not a planet. It pulsed like a living signal, broadcasting waves of strange resonance. Unknown vessel or structure, the science officer reported. Signal does not match any known database. The captain frowned. Can we translate? Not with our systems, the officer replied. But the signal feels emotional, almost like it's carrying moods instead of words. Daniel's heart skipped. Emotional signals. He remembered Kayla's questions, her tests. Could it be possible that the strange things humans carried, the laughter, the admiration, the hope, were about to matter in ways no one expected? Kayla glanced at Daniel, her eyes sharp and curious. For the first time, he saw not just a teacher studying a subject, but a comrade who had discovered something important. She whispered just loud enough for him to hear. Perhaps your slip was no accident after all. The screen pulsed again, filling the bridge with waves that almost felt like whispers inside their heads. The crew grew uneasy, exchanging worried looks. Daniel felt his stomach twist. He had no idea what the signal was saying. But he knew one thing. Humans might be the only ones on board who could answer. The bridge of Aurora's Hope was silent except for the steady hum of the engines. All eyes were fixed on the glowing signal pulsing on the main screen. It was not just light or sound, it carried something deeper, like waves of feeling pressing against the minds of the crew. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others looked around in confusion. Daniel sat stiffly at his console, trying to make sense of the sensation. It was not words, yet he felt something inside him, a kind of sadness mixed with curiosity. It was like standing next to someone who was trying to speak but had no voice. Captain Reeves folded his arms. Science officer, report. What exactly are we dealing with? The officer shook her head. Sir, it isn't a normal transmission. The waves seem to carry emotional patterns. No clear language structure. Our systems can't translate, Commander Harker frowned. Then it's useless. Without logic or words, there's no communication. Before anyone could reply, Kayla stepped forward. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Not useless, she said calmly. Perhaps not logical, but it is communication. They are speaking through feeling. Daniel glanced at her, his heart racing. He remembered their conversation in the observation deck. Hope, connection, beauty. Maybe this was exactly what she had been preparing him for. The captain looked doubtful. And how do you suggest we answer feelings, Lieutenant? Kayla's gaze shifted toward Daniel. Through him, she said simply. Daniel nearly fell out of his chair. Me, sir, Kayla cut him off. He understands the value of expression beyond logic. He explained it well yesterday. Humans carry meaning and emotions. If anyone on this crew can reach them, it will be him. Commander Harker shook his head. This is ridiculous. We should attempt a mathematical code, something universal. Not feelings. But the signal pulsed again, stronger this time. A wave of raw emotion washed over the bridge. Some crew members pressed their hands to their heads, shaken by the pressure. Daniel felt it too. Loneliness deep and heavy, like the cry of a child lost in the dark. His chest tightened. Without thinking, he spoke. They're scared. The captain turned sharply. How do you know that? Daniel hesitated, but the truth spilled out. Because I can feel it. They're not threatening us. They're reaching out. They don't want to be alone, Kayla nodded. Then respond, Ensign. Show them what it means to be human. Daniel swallowed hard. His palms were sweaty, his throat dry. But he remembered what Kayla had said. Connection was the key. Slowly, he closed his eyes and lowered his voice. Send an open broadcast, he said. No encryption. Just audio. The captain gave a reluctant nod and the channel opened. Daniel leaned toward the microphone. His voice shook at first, but he forced himself to continue. This is Ensign Daniel Carter of the ship Aurora's Hope, he said softly. We hear you. You are not alone. For a moment, nothing happened. The signal on the screen flickered, then pulsed faster, almost like a heartbeat. The wave that followed was different, lighter, warmer. Daniel felt it in his chest like sunlight breaking through clouds. The crew stared at the screen in shock. "It changed," the science officer whispered. The emotional frequency shifted. "They're responding." Daniel's fear eased slightly. He continued speaking, trying to let his real thoughts guide him. "We don't know your language, but we understand feelings. We know fear. We know hope. We want to learn from you." The screen shimmered with brighter colors, and another wave rolled over them, this time filled with cautious joy, like the first laugh of someone who had forgotten how. Kayla's voice was calm but firm. "You see? Their language is resonance. It answers honesty. Keep going, Ensign," Daniel thought carefully. What could he give them? He remembered the stars outside the window, the way they had inspired him as a child. He spoke again, his words plain but filled with emotion. "When we look at the stars, we feel small, but we also feel wonder. Every new place gives us meaning. Meeting you gives us meaning too." The bridge lights flickered as the signal resonated more strongly than before. Everyone could feel it now, not just Daniel. The pulse filled the air with warmth, spreading through their minds like music without sound. Some officers gasped, others closed their eyes. For the first time, the crew felt they were truly hearing the strangers. The captain looked at Daniel, half in disbelief. "It's working." Kayla's eyes glowed brighter as she nodded. "Because he speaks with honesty. That is the one language they cannot resist." Commander Harker still looked doubtful, but he said nothing. Even he could not deny the shift in the atmosphere. Daniel leaned back, exhausted but strangely alive. The connection was fragile, like holding a thread of glass that could break at any second. But he knew they had taken the first step. The signal pulsed one last time, softer now, almost like a whisper. Daniel felt the meaning in it clearly. Gratitude. He looked at Kayla, who was watching him with quiet approval. She gave a slight nod as if to say, "This is why you were needed." The captain turned back to the crew. "Maintain position. Keep the channel open. If this species can truly understand us, we may be on the edge of the most important first contact in decades." Daniel sat in silence, his heart still racing. He had not planned any of it. He had simply spoken from the heart, clumsy but real, and somehow it had reached across the stars. He thought back to the moment when his careless thought had slipped during the neural link. At the time, he had wished he could erase it. But now he began to wonder if Kala was right. That slip had not been the end. It had been the beginning. The bridge of Aurora's hope remained quiet as the strange pulsing signal filled the air. For the first time, the alien presence no longer felt threatening. Instead, it carried an almost gentle rhythm like a song sung across space. The crew exchanged cautious glances, each one aware that something historic was happening. Captain Reeves leaned forward in his chair. "Science officer, what's their status?" The officer frowned at the readings. "The signal has changed again." "It's steady now, more focused." "It almost feels like an invitation." "Invitation to what?" Commander Harker asked sharply. Before anyone could guess, the display on the main screen shifted. The glowing pulse stretched and shaped itself into a simple pattern. Circles nested inside one another, pulsing like ripples on water. At the same time, another wave of emotion swept through the crew. Daniel felt it clearly, curiosity mixed with demand. It was as though the strangers were asking a question without words. Kayla studied the pattern carefully. "They want proof," she said finally. "They are testing us. They wish to see if we are worthy of communication." The captain narrowed his eyes. "Worthy? How exactly are we supposed to prove that?" Kayla turned to Daniel. "Through him," Daniel stiffened. "Again? I don't even know what I'm doing." "You know more than you think," Kayla replied calmly. "They respond to honesty, not formulas. Your human way of linking feeling with meaning may be the only answer they understand." Commander Harker scowled. "This is absurd. You would put the fate of our first contact in the hands of an ensign with no training." Kayla's voice sharpened, though it never lost its calm. "Training and logic will not help here. They do not want cold precision. They want something real. That is what he can give." The captain thought for a long moment. His gaze moved from Kayla to Daniel, and then to the glowing circles on the screen. Finally, he said, "Ensign Carter, you've already gotten further with them than any of us. If you believe you can continue, do it." Daniel swallowed hard. His hands trembled, but he forced himself to nod. "I'll try." The science officer opened the channel again. The circles on the screen pulsed brighter, waiting. Daniel took a deep breath and spoke slowly, letting his feelings guide the words. "We are humans. We don't have perfect answers. We make mistakes and sometimes we say the wrong thing. But we always try to learn. We care about beauty, about laughter, about hope. These things make us strong. If you want to know who we are, this is who we are. For a moment, there was no response. Then the circles shifted, breaking apart and reforming into a new shape. Spirals crossing each other. The wave that followed struck the crew with raw force. Some gasped, others gripped their consoles. Daniel nearly lost his balance as the meaning hit him. "They're challenging us," he whispered. Kayla nodded. "Yes, they want more than words. They want proof that your emotions are not weakness." The captain looked uneasy. "Proof how?" Before anyone could answer, alarms blared across the bridge. The ship's sensors picked up a sudden surge of energy from the alien signal. A new wave crashed against them, not gentle this time, but sharp and heavy. The crew staggered under the pressure, struggling to keep focus. It was like being dragged into someone else's nightmare. Fear, doubt, and despair filled the air. Daniel felt his chest tighten. The aliens were testing them, forcing the crew to face raw emotion. If they failed, the first contact could collapse into disaster. Kayla turned to Daniel. Her voice was steady but urgent. "They are showing us fear. You must answer it." Daniel closed his eyes, gripping the console. The wave of despair pressed down like a storm, trying to drown him. But he thought of Earth, of his family, of the countless explorers before him who had faced darkness and still moved forward. He thought of laughter in hard times, of music in war, of people holding hands even when everything seemed lost. He opened his eyes and spoke into the channel, his voice shaking but strong. "We know fear. We've lived with it since the beginning. But fear is not the end. Fear makes us fight harder. Fear makes us hope, and hope is stronger." The wave of despair flickered, then weakened. The spirals on the screen trembled, collapsing into another pattern, a rising line glowing brighter. The next wave that followed carried something entirely different. It was not fear anymore. It was respect. The crew let out a collective breath of relief. The science officer whispered, "The signal. It's stabilizing." They accepted his response. The captain leaned back, his stern face softening just slightly. "Well done, Ensign." Daniel was too exhausted to feel proud. His chest still ached from the emotional storm, but inside, he knew Kayla had been right. Honesty had carried them through. Kayla stepped closer to him, her expression unreadable but her eyes glowing brighter than before. "You see now," she said quietly, "why your people's way matters. What you called a mistake may be the very reason we succeed." Daniel managed a weak smile. "I just hope I don't run out of words before they stop testing us." Kayla gave the faintest hint of amusement. "Do not worry. Humans seem to have endless words." The screen pulsed again, softer this time, carrying a new wave that felt almost like an invitation to continue. The test was not over, but for the first time Daniel felt that maybe they stood a chance. The silence on the bridge of Aurora's hope stretched long after the last pulse of respect faded from the alien signal. Every member of the crew sat still, as though afraid to move and break the fragile connection they had gained. The ship's hum filled the quiet, a reminder that despite the strange storm they had faced, they were still standing. Captain Reeves studied the glowing lines on the main screen. They no longer pulsed with challenge, but with steady rhythm, almost like breathing. His voice was low, but it carried weight. "They've accepted us for now. But this isn't finished. They will test us again." Daniel Carter sat at his console, hands still trembling. He felt drained, as if the alien waves had stripped him bare. Yet beneath the exhaustion there was a small spark of pride. He had spoken with honesty, and the aliens had listened. Kayla stepped closer to him. Her tall frame and calm presence seemed to steady the air itself. "You carried us through their fear trial," she said. "That is no small thing. But the next step will be harder." Daniel looked up at her, worry clouding his face. Harder? That already felt impossible. Kayla tilted her head. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light of the bridge. "Fear is only one side of the trial. They will want to see if your hope can hold against despair, if your courage can stand against destruction. To them, survival is not enough. They wish to know what you live for." The captain frowned. "What we live for. How do we show that in a language of light and emotion?" Kayla's gaze shifted to Daniel again. "Through him. Through the same honesty he has already given." Commander Harker slammed a hand against the arm of his chair. "This is madness. You're telling me the fate of Earth's first contact depends on an ensign with no training? No preparation and nothing but feelings? Kayla turned to face him, her tone calm but firm. What you call weakness, they see as strength. Humans have always fought with more than weapons. You fight with stories, with songs, with dreams. That is what they are searching for. And that is why he must continue. The tension in the room deepened. Daniel felt the weight of every gaze on him, some doubtful, some hopeful, some afraid. He took a slow breath. I'll do it. I don't know how, but I'll do it. The captain gave a short nod, his expression unreadable. Then prepare yourself, Ensign. Because if Kayla is right, their next trial won't just test you, it will test all of us. As though summoned by his words, the signal on the screen shifted. The steady rhythm broke, twisting into a storm of light. Lines shattered into fragments, swirling like shards caught in a cosmic wind. A new wave slammed into the ship, stronger than before. The lights flickered. The crew staggered. Daniel gripped the edge of his console, his chest tightening. The wave carried not fear this time, but something heavier. Loss, emptiness, grief so vast it seemed to swallow the air. He felt memories of his own losses rise unbidden, his grandmother's smile fading with illness, friends left behind when he joined the fleet, the ache of saying goodbye too many times. Kayla stood steady beside him, though even her voice held strain. They show you despair. You must answer it. Daniel's vision blurred, not from the lights but from the weight pressing down on him. Despair whispered that nothing mattered, that all effort would end in ruin, that hope was foolish. He wanted to collapse, to let the silence win. But deep inside, something pushed back. He remembered laughter on long nights, the sound of rain on a roof, the way people held each other after tragedy. He remembered Kayla's calm strength and the way the captain's voice carried certainty even in chaos. He remembered that humanity had always built again, even from ashes. Drawing on that fire, Daniel raised his head and spoke, his voice rough but firm. We know despair. We've buried our dead, we've lost our homes, we've seen our worlds burn. But we don't stop there. We rebuild. We sing for the ones we've lost. We carry them with us in every step forward. Despair doesn't end us, it teaches us why we must keep living. The storm of light on the screen wavered. The fragments slowed, gathering into a single shape again. The wave of despair weakened, replaced by a gentler current. The crew exhaled as though they had been holding their breath all at once. The captain leaned forward. Science officer status? The officer's voice shook with relief. The signal is stabilizing again. They're listening. Kayla's eyes softened as she looked at Daniel. You answered them well. You showed them that humanity does not break. That is what they wish to see. Daniel slumped in his chair, exhausted but alive. His chest ached, but pride warmed his heart. He had faced despair and spoken against it, and the aliens had listened. But the calm did not last long. The signal pulsed once more, stronger than ever before. The spirals and circles merged into a towering shape of light, stretching across the entire screen. The wave that followed did not carry fear or despair, but something else, something vast and unknown. The science officer's hands flew across the console. Captain, this energy surge, it's massive. If it continues, it could tear us apart. The captain's jaw tightened. Then this is it. The final test. Kayla placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, steadying him. They have seen your courage, your hope, and your defiance of despair. Now they will ask the last question. What is it that makes humanity worth trusting? Daniel stared at the screen, the storm of light reflecting in his tired eyes. His heart pounded, but he nodded slowly. He knew the final test was coming, and he knew he had to face it, not just for himself, but for all of humanity. The bridge of Aurora's hope was tense, every officer gripping their console as the alien signal pulsed with towering intensity. The spirals of light had grown enormous, filling the main view screen with a swirling storm of emotion. This was the final test, the last question, and the pressure weighed heavily on everyone. Daniel Carter's chest tightened as he felt the waves of energy hitting the ship. It was not just power. It was expectation, scrutiny, and something he could almost call judgment. The signal carried questions not in words, but in feeling. What makes humanity worth trusting? Why should we matter to them? Could humans stand alongside other species in the galaxy? Kayla stepped beside him, her calm presence steadying his shaking hands. Remember, she whispered, they respond to honesty. Speak what is true, even if it seems small. Speak as humans do. Daniel closed his eyes and drew a deep breath. He thought of everything he had learned in the past days. Laughter that bridged gaps, honesty that built trust, hope that carried them through despair. He remembered fear and courage, despair and determination, beauty and emotion. All these things, his people's quirks, their flaws, their strength, were humanity. And he would show it. He leaned forward and spoke into the open channel, his voice shaking at first but growing stronger. We are humans. We are not perfect. We make mistakes, we fall, we stumble. We argue, we doubt, we fight, and we fail. But we do not stop. We try again. We build again. We love even when it is hard. And we hope even when the universe seems dark. We see beauty in small things, joy in laughter, courage in imperfection, and strength in hope. That is what makes us human. That is why we matter. The ship shuddered as the alien signal responded. This time the wave was not threatening. It was curious, almost cautious, like a being leaning forward to see if what it sensed was real. The crew held their breath, sensing that something monumental was unfolding. Daniel continued, letting his own feelings guide him. We do not survive only to exist. We survive because life is precious. We survive because each life carries meaning. We connect with each other, with the universe, with every new discovery. And when we meet others, strangers, aliens, beings unlike us, we do not see only danger or difference. We see possibility. We see friendship. We see hope. The spirals of light on the main screen shifted, forming patterns that glimmered like stars aligning. Waves of emotion flowed through the bridge again, but this time they were lighter, warmer, inviting. Daniel could sense understanding, recognition, and respect. For the first time, he felt not pressure but connection. Kayla's hand lightly touched his shoulder. They understand. Keep going. Speak from the heart. Daniel nodded and spoke again, softer now with sincerity. We do not pretend to be perfect. We do not hide our flaws. We embrace them because they make us real. And we face the universe not with cold logic alone, but with courage, laughter, hope, and care. That is what humans bring to the stars. That is why we can stand together with others. That is why we are worthy. The energy on the screen shifted again. The harsh spirals and fractals softened into a brilliant glow that filled the viewport. The wave of emotion that rolled across the bridge was gentle, strong, and undeniably clear. Daniel could feel pride, admiration, and acceptance washing over him. The alien presence had recognized humanity, not just as survivors, but as a species capable of beauty, empathy, and courage in ways no logic alone could explain. The captain exhaled, his stern face relaxing slightly. Science officer status. The officer shook her head in amazement. Signal is stabilizing completely. It's welcoming. They've accepted our crew. And more than that, they seem to value our humanity. Daniel slumped in his chair, exhausted but glowing with relief. His voice was hoarse, his limbs tired, but his heart felt light. He glanced at Kayla, whose silver skin gleamed faintly in the dim bridge light. She gave a small nod, a quiet smile touching her lips. You see now, Ensign. What you thought was awkward, a mistake, or trivial, your honesty, your imperfections, your human nature, they were exactly what was needed. Daniel allowed himself a small, proud smile. So, my slip yesterday wasn't the end of the world? Kayla's eyes sparkled. On the contrary, it was the beginning. It reminded them and reminded us why humans are unique, why we matter in this vast galaxy. The captain finally spoke, voice steady. Ensign Carter, you and Lieutenant Kayla have done what no one else could. You've made first contact not just possible, but meaningful. Humanity has proven its worth. Daniel looked around at the bridge crew, exhausted faces breaking into relieved smiles. Even Commander Harker nodded, reluctantly impressed. Daniel realized that the strength of humans was not just in their technology or discipline, it was in their heart, their courage and their willingness to show vulnerability without fear. The alien signal pulsed gently one last time, like a quiet applause from the stars. Daniel felt a warmth spreading through the ship, a reassurance that humanity had been recognized and welcomed. He realized that the moment of truth had arrived not because of power or strategy, but because humans had been unapologetically themselves. For the first time, Daniel understood the full meaning of what Kayla had been teaching him. Humanity's value was not in perfection or control, but in honesty, empathy, courage, and hope. The very things he had once feared were weaknesses had become their greatest strength. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted, exhilarated, and proud. In the silence of the bridge, he whispered softly to himself, "We are human, and that is enough." The stars beyond the viewport twinkled as if in agreement, and for the first time on this long journey, Daniel felt that humanity truly belonged in the vastness of the galaxy.